emergency physician, veteran, professor, entrepreneur.
Story of former U.S. Army Dr. Sudip Bose.
Dr. Sudip Bose.
Dr. Sudip Bose.
You can read about Dr. Sudip Bose's story in today's edition of the Daily Herald. This guy treated Saddam Hussein.
Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's just realizing there's something greater than that, going forward and doing your job.
Sudip, remember that job at Little Italian Pizza?
Sudip was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. Growing up, Sudip camped with the Cub Scouts and ran track for Naperville Central High. He graduated from Northwestern University's Feinberg School of Medicine. After graduating, he joined the U.S. Army. Dr. Bose's parents, Subhas and Aloka Bose, have always supported his ambitions. His mother knew early on her son had something special to offer.
My father passed away, and there was a PBS show about heart surgery, open heart surgery. And I sat down to see it. Sudip sat with me, and he saw the whole thing, then got up and said, "I want to be a doctor."
During battle in the streets of Fallujah, Chris Kyle, known as the American Sniper, protected Dr. Bose's back as he rushed to injured soldiers to save lives.
Up in a building, on a rooftop, our snipers had our backs. Chris Kyle, amongst history's greatest snipers, Chris Kyle had our backs.
After receiving the Bronze Star for serving one of the longest continuous combat tours by a military physician since World War II, Dr. Bose felt his skills learned in combat could best be served in the busiest emergency rooms in the country. Serving side by side with courageous soldiers, Dr. Bose felt inspired to create the battlecontinues.org to provide medical support for veterans in need by helping them gain access to better healthcare and health education. As a physician on the front lines of America's healthcare system, Dr. Bose has firsthand experience with the current, changing, and urgent medical needs of Americans. His vision is advancing healthcare for all by educating the public as a professor and public speaker, authoring a leading textbook in emergency medicine, continuing to inform the public through various media outlets, and waging a war on increasing healthcare costs by providing revolutionary solutions. Because even when the chaos of war or the emergency room subsides, the battle still continues to have a better understanding of our most valuable possession, our health.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for your time today. I want to take a few moments of your time to discuss some veteran health issues, particularly PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which is an issue that affects not only veterans, but all of us. And I'm going to do this from the perspective of a practicing physician seeing patients with the condition, but also from the perspective of someone who's experienced combat stress myself. So let me start by taking you to a story of combat years past. Imagine this for a moment. It's December 1777, Valley Forge. An Army Continental soldier in his tattered uniform lies in the snow, bleeding from his amputated leg. He wants to survive his injury. He has hope that he's going to survive his injury, but that hope never arrives. Ambulances and hospitals don't exist yet. It's not until 100 years later, during the Civil War, when brother was pit against brother, North versus South, that our first ambulances, horse-drawn carriages, took patients to patients' homes, churches, which were our newly formed hospitals. Blood transfusions don't exist yet. It's not until World War I, amongst the noxious gases in the trenches, that we were able to take blood from a healthy patient and give it to a bleeding patient. Antibiotics don't exist yet. It's not until World War II, amongst concentration camps and atomic bombs, that we started using penicillin. That's a problem for our Valley Forge soldier, because even a 2-millimeter piece of shrapnel to his right arm will eventually become infected. His limb will become gangrenous, he'll become septic, and he will die from that wound. Air evacuation doesn't exist yet. Korean War. Hope never arrived for our Valley Forge soldier. In our crowd today, we have Sergeant Levi Wilson. Can you stand up, Levi? Meet Levi. He was injured in Iraq, and for a moment, they thought we could not save your leg. But now he stands with us. With 2 legs, he stayed persistent, and hope arrived for Levi. Andy McDaniel, would you please stand? Shrapnel to the right arm. Brought back some souvenirs from Iraq, some shrapnel that remains in his right arm. But hope arrived for Andy. And we have a Sergeant First Class Wolf. Another hero we're honoring today, where we thought we could not save your leg. Hope arrived. Let me tell you another story, modern day. Back room of my emergency department. A lady cries loudly, my next patient. Tears roll down her eyes. Her voice quivers as she tries to tell me why she's in the emergency room. She's sleeping at home alone, and she heard a loud noise. She heard someone tiptoeing up the steps. Was someone trying to break into her home? The creaking of the floor pierced the silence. She grabbed her gun, pointed it at the door in an attempt to defend herself. The door swung open, she reflexively fired. The bang echoed across the room, and she stared in horror at what she had done. She had just shot her 6-year-old daughter in the head. Like many of our veterans, this image will haunt my patient forever. She will always be haunted by images of pulling that trigger on her daughter. And it will skip back to that same memory, like a record player skipping to the same part of the tragic song, over and over and over again. These mental injuries, they're real. We see changes on the scans of people's brains. For example, one structure of the brain is called the amygdala that we see changed on the scan. The amygdala, we have 2 of them. They're almond-shaped structures located on each side of the brain. And the amygdala is what's responsible for associating a life event to an emotion. So for example, it's July 4th, you hear fireworks. That may transport you to memories of summer barbecues, warm, brisk wind, good times with the family. That's your amygdala at work. But there's a dark side. For the soldier with PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder, that same noise from the fireworks can transport the patient to memories of the battlefield. Same amygdala. This mental illness ranges from minor symptoms that resolve all the way to the most severe form, where for 22 soldiers a day, hope arrives in the form of leg wounds, arm wounds, torso wounds, but they come back and they take their own lives. 22 a day. And statistically looking at it, a large fraction of these are the Vietnam veterans. This occurs over 30 years later. So how do we prevent this generation from becoming one of the 22? I think first, we have to understand PTSD. We can't be mistaken about this entity. I think we're mistaken in many ways. I think we need to remove the D from PTSD. It's not a disorder. It's post-traumatic stress. We're animals, primates, evolved to survive danger. We want to have nightmares and hallucinations of what can kill us. We want to be easily aroused, to awaken from sleep, from what can eat us. Anger, it predisposes us to fight. And depression takes us out of circulation for a bit. We can't be mistaken about this. I can recognize, as a physician treating patients, I can recognize the flashbacks, I can recognize the nightmares. What I can't recognize, and I can't always catch, is the isolation, the loneliness that soldiers often face. And this is where you come into the picture. This is what the spouses catch. The spouses are backbones. This is what the person in the cubicle next to you, the coworker, catches. We're mistaken if we don't think you are the ones who are going to catch PTSD. We're mistaken if we think a sergeant major, a macho sergeant major, is going to come back and report these symptoms after finishing his deployment when he knows that it'll delay him from returning back to his family. We're mistaken that he's going to put it on a job application when it's going to delay him from getting the job. And we're mistaken if we think he's going to show a sign of weakness. I was talking to one of our soldiers yesterday, and I was asking, do you miss war? And the soldier said, yeah, I miss war. I miss everything about war. And there were a few of us around, and we're kind of just looking at him like, you miss war? But veterans do miss war. Why do they miss war? We're not crazy. We're not psychopaths. We don't like killing people. We don't like getting shot at or seeing our friends get shot at. But what we miss is the brotherhood. This is a crucial concept to understand if we're going to heal our nation and we're going to heal our veterans. Brotherhood. Our Valley Forge Revolutionary War soldier had brotherhood as he teamed against a common enemy to throw chests of tea across a ship at a harbor in Boston. And now, veterans return to a nation divided, where the political parties literally accuse each other of treason and being enemies of the state. Racial inequality is worse than ever as protesters march the streets. The gap between rich and poor is larger than it's ever been. People hurl insults at each other on social media. And although we have a lot of friends on social media, we become more and more isolated and lonely as we stare at our smartphones. If our platoon behaved like this in Fallujah, we would be killed immediately. Brotherhood. We are missing that deep human connection. It's caked in our DNA. That's how we evolved to gather food, to survive. And we can't let that human bond crumble in this generation. How do we do that? Listen. Just take time to listen. Pause before responding. And don't be so quick to judge someone different than yourself. I find it difficult to look at this number, this 22 a day, and pin it to an isolated traumatic event. Because why are we blaming an isolated traumatic event when it's occurring 30 years later? Why are we pinning it to one event when only 10% of soldiers see combat, but 50% claim PTSD? Maybe we shouldn't be pinning this to a traumatic event. Maybe we shouldn't be pinning this to the veteran. Maybe we should look at ourselves as a society. Maybe we should be calling this not post-traumatic stress disorder, but post-traumatic isolation syndrome, post-traumatic loneliness syndrome, post-traumatic lack of brotherhood syndrome. We've journeyed from the muskets of Valley Forge to this banquet hall here tonight to honor our veterans. And for hope to arrive, we must find a brotherhood to create an environment that not only helps us, but it helps returning veterans. In the United States, we don't have mandatory military service. Levi volunteered. He took the injuries so we did not have to. It is our duty to provide him brotherhood. In support, his wife, Kayla, stands. We listen to Levi. A listener stands. Someone with spare change at a coffee shop, willing to buy Levi a coffee. A simple move. Someone willing to do a kind gesture stands. Someone gives him a job, a sense of purpose. An employer stands. And then a room stands. A banquet hall stands. A city stands. A state stands. A nation stands. Together, brotherhood. United we stand. The United States of America. Thank you. Thank you.